Welcome to the Unscripted podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Nicastro. We're here today celebrating International Women's Day 2026, and I have a special guest who is going to help me share a love note for women across the world. I'm excited to welcome today Hannah Knowles, who is the co-author of recently released book Love Notes, as well as a keynote speaker and trainer with Art of Brilliance, an organization that exists to help individuals and teams raise the bar from surviving to thriving. Hannah, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
We're delighted to have you. Before we dive in, tell everyone a bit more about yourself, your work, anything you would like to share.
Yeah, well, I mean, you did a great job to be honest. But in terms of sort of a bit about me, so yes, I work for a company called Art of Brilliance, and we're a wellbeing training company, and we do kind of have one mission. And that is to try and help everyone feel a little bit better every single day. So we try to give people really simple tips, tricks, strategies, thoughts that might just sort of nudge them a little bit closer to hopefully feeling a little bit better during the day, because it's pretty brutal at the
Mm,
moment, the world. It feels pretty full on and relentless, and change is something I know we've talked about, but it's going to be one of those things that's constant, and it is coming at us faster and thicker than ever before. So what we try to do is try and hopefully empower teams, individuals, leaders to actually focus on some of the things they can control
mhm.
rather than what they can't. So my role within Art of Brilliance is I deliver keynotes with conferences, with businesses within the NHS here in the UK, also with sports teams, but then also dive deeper and do longer format training sessions and workshops that can last from sort of a half day up to a full day as well.
Hmm. Wonderful. And if it's okay with you, before we get into today's topic, the meat of it, you mentioned that endurance training, your love of books, and family adventures are three of the things that make you tick. I would love to hear a bit more about those and how they, sort of influence the work that you do.
Yeah, I know. Gosh, how, how do I sum it all up? I do. I love endurance events. I call myself like an endurance enthusiast. I'd love to say endurance athlete, but I don't know if I quite meet that sort of title
I
just
bet you
yet.
do. I bet you
I'm
do.
working on it. I'm working on it. But no, I'm a big believer in getting outside your comfort zone. I'm a
Hmm.
big believer in pushing yourself physically as much as possible, but also mentally as well. So, in terms of sort of, I like to be able to bring the subjects I'm talking about to life, and I sort of try and test some of the ideas and strategies on myself before I share them with other people. And when I tell people about setting themselves big goals, when I talk about developing new habits to try, where I talk about stepping outside their comfort zones, it is all said because I've been on the other side of it, and I've had a
Hmm.
go at it and done those things. So that definitely, going for a run in the countryside is like one of my favorite things to do, preferably with my dog first thing in the morning. I love that. And then if if the family are lucky enough, you'd have to ask them. They might say they don't feel very lucky. I like to drag them along to events as well. So I'm taking part in the Barcelona Marathon next weekend, and I suggested to the family it'd be a fun little outing for us all
Hmm.
to go over to Barcelona for a long weekend. So I did the marathon, and then we ate tapas, and we had some nice family memories as well.
I love that. Yeah, I love the family adventures. Folks who have followed me know that that is very important to me as well. I grew up in a really small town. My dad has still never been on an airplane, and so I have grown so much and have such an appreciation for traveling and seeing different places and meeting new people and just you mentioned getting out of your comfort zone, just getting out of your environment, and how that can expand your mind. And it's very important for me that my kids have that opportunity as well. So we love adventures and they can be big or small. They can be a road trip where we go camping and we do something different, or they can be a international flight. It's anything can be an adventure if you look at it that way.
I love that. Definitely, anything can be. It comes down to sort of how you're looking at it, the story you're telling yourself about it,
Hmm.
and I guess what version of you is showing up. So sort of, here in the UK, we get a lot of rain. So camping in the rain, it's like, well, okay, how do we make this fun and exciting?
Hmm.
Rather than being like, oh, it's raining again. What? Why did we choose camping? We should have jumped on a flight to Spain and got a bit of sun or something like that. But I know I love it. I think every experience presents an opportunity. It just comes down to, yeah, how you're looking at it and ultimately how you go on to respond to it. And I think
Yeah.
doing things that are hard, or like say travel, having moments in work but also outside of work that can push you and test you and try out new things, it all adds, it all
Hmm.
helps. I don't know if you find this, because obviously you're a busy person, that sometimes when you step away and you go on holiday, it can take me a couple of days to settle into it. And cause the guilt kicks in. I don't know if it's a
Hmm.
female thing. The guilt kicks in. Oh, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. But once I'm in it, it's like, oh, why did it take me so long to get here
Yeah.
now? And I'm immersed. I'm so in it.
I do. So for me, it's similar. My guilt happens before we leave, though. This just happened. We went on a family trip to meet up with some friends actually in Puerto Rico at the end of January, and we planned it, months in advance. And so when the time came, it was just quite poor timing, and I found myself, in the spiral of guilt, regret, stress of getting everything ready, getting everyone packed. My the kids were sick before we left, all of the things, right? But for me, and maybe it's just with practice, like the moment we leave, it's just a switch. The moment we got on the airplane, and I saw my kids so excited, it's just like this, yes, there's a reason we're doing this. It is valuable, and then I'm fully immersed. And sometimes it's like, can we just stay? I don't know if I can go back to real life. Of course you do, but yeah, I definitely understand. Now, books. What do you like to read?
Oof. Anything and everything, really. I love fiction.
Hmm.
I really do love fiction. I grew up sort of reading a lot of fiction as a teenager. But I do also read a lot of non-fiction. I'm a big biography fan, so
Hmm.
like a big chunky historical biography. I just read Sonia Purnell. She's a fantastic author, and she wrote a biography of Pamela Churchill Harriman, who was Winston Churchill's daughter-in-law, and the book's called Kingmaker. And wow, gosh, what a life she had!
Hmm.
Like, oh my goodness me, what a life she had. And so it's like when somebody can sort of get you so absorbed into sort
Hmm.
of life that happened many years ago, and you turn in the page, you're absolutely sort of drawn in and sucked in. It's a real gift. So yeah, I love those. But I'm one of my favorite questions to ask people is sort of like, what's the best book you've read, or what book are you reading right now, or what book made you think a bit differently about things?
Hmm.
And if you do that, gosh, there's so many fantastic recommendations that can come your way, and you stumble across books that you've never even dreamed of, or
Yeah.
heard of, and you think, gosh, this really made me see the world a little bit differently, or actually, this
Yeah.
has made me feel a little bit better. This is what I needed today. So yeah, are you
It's
a big
another
reader?
form of adventure, right?
Oh,
I
for
mean, it's
sure.
another way to leave your own environment and experience something different, change your context, change your perspective. And yeah, I love to read as well. I had a brief period of early motherhood chaos where I completely abandoned it out of exhaustion. But I found my way back, and like you, all different types of books. And yeah, I really appreciate that it's a really nice way to take a break from digital life and, just connect to, a different time, a different landscape, a different way of thinking. And yeah, it's wonderful.
It is. I drive my partner mad because I often get asked like, why don't you use a Kindle? Why don't you use an iPad to read? And it's like we've got all these stacks of books around
Hmm.
the house. I like a physical book. There's
Me
something
too.
about like as you say, being in this digital world, everything's on screen nowadays. We're talking through a screen. So
Hmm.
to actually have moments throughout the day where you're not on a screen, it is just, I think, really quite nice. And it sort of it keeps me sort of balanced, I guess, in amongst all the busyness
Hmm.
of
I agree. Okay, so we're here together to celebrate International Women's Day, and you recently co-authored a book called Love Notes, described as a treasure trove of quotes, short stories, meaningful insights, and fun nonsense that all shed light on what gives our lives meaning, which is love. So I'm curious what love note you would give women today.
Oh, wow, gosh. I mean, so many, but I think that the one that sort of comes to mind the most is it's about sort of as women just sort of being a bit kinder to ourselves.
Mm,
I probably don't want to sound like a cliche, but I do think it's important to talk about it. I think as females, we can be so guilty of trying to be kind to everyone else, looking after everybody else, caring for everybody else. And then it's like, I'll get round to me at some point. You know,
hmm.
some one day I'll get round to looking after myself. And I don't know what it is. There's something about it sometimes can feel a bit selfish to look after yourself. Because it's like, no, other people need me more. So I need to do that. But I like to talk in my keynotes about sort of the importance of actually no, start with you. Because truthfully, that version of you, if you're looking after you, puts you in a better position to handle the challenges and troubles that life can throw at you. But also, you're a better human for those that you're around as well. And it goes against sort of the pressures and the story that sort of society can sometimes tell us, particularly
Hmm.
as women. So I try to sort of go against that really that narrative and encourage women to yeah start with you. It's not selfish, it really isn't. So being kind to yourself, you know, taking a bit of the pressure off rather than striving for perfection. It's about looking at progress and thinking, did I do a little bit better today than I did do yesterday? And I think if you can say yes to that, you're on the right lines. And sometimes that can be just yeah being a bit kinder, saying some nicer things to yourself, and daring to take 5 minutes to enjoy a cup of coffee in the morning instead of
Hmm.
trying to put a wash on, maybe sort out the dog and the cat, get the cereal ready for the kids, iron a top, instead of
Hmm.
actually just be there in those 5 minutes and just hit pause. It's so easy to feel guilty for
Yeah.
doing those things, but actually I find that finding those little moments can just help set us up for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I agree fully. And it's one of those things, like many things that we talk about on this podcast, that sounds so simple, but is incredibly complex. And you mentioned these societal pressures and narratives. I think often, at least for myself, there's also an inner dialogue, that is, I'm often hardest on myself when it comes to guilt and pressure. And I've also found, we were chatting before we began recording, and I know you have a daughter who's 18 months, and my sons are a bit older. I've had seasons that I've done really well at being kind to myself and taking care of myself. But it's not something, to your point, that you master and then you're just good at it. There's then seasons. I've said this, the start of this year, for some reason, I've completely abandoned myself. And I'm in this cycle right now of putting myself last, and I'm conscious of it. And, to your point at the beginning, I think we have this tendency to um, do black or white thinking, all or nothing thinking. Well, when I get through this, then I will do a better job. And really, to your point, it's looking for those little things. How can I, make 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes for myself a priority today and not keep, putting myself at the bottom of the list. So yeah, I think it's a really important point that so many women can resonate with.
Yeah, no, hopefully that they do, because it is like, I think what's lovely about sort of this podcast and what you're sort of doing is about letting people not feel alone. You're
Hmm.
not the only one that feels like this. Like there are other people out there that are also, got the same struggles and are dealing with the same things you are. So it's sort of, hopefully this episode as well is just sort of gives people just a chance to sort of be like, it's okay. You're
Hmm.
doing good. You're doing good. One of my favorite phrases I heard once that I repeat to myself all the time is that consistency beats intensity. And
Hmm.
I think that when you think about, say, habits or self-care, that we can, that all or nothing kind of thinking, oh,
Hmm.
I went to go for a run today. Well, what's the point? I haven't done it. So it's a failure right off the day. But actually, even, and as daft as it sounds, going for a 5 minute run is still better
Hmm.
than no run. A walk is still better even than doing nothing at all. And I think if in terms of habits and goal setting, if we can kind of try and come up with looking at what are the small little consistent things we can do each day, whether that's saying nicer things to ourselves, whether that's that 5 minute sort of pause when we're waiting for the coffee, or actually going out and getting some fresh air, built up over time, that really creates a meaningful impact rather than that sort of right, we've got to do it. Here we go. Because I'm like you. I'm all or nothing.
Hmm.
I've had to really work at this, and I've found that in terms of my sort of a well-being, is that it's made a huge difference. Being a bit kinder and forgiving myself. I didn't go for the run today, but you know what? I got outside and I moved my body, or I did some yoga. That's okay.
Hmm.
That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, it's really good food for thought. I was just thinking as you were saying that in both 2024 and 2025, I did a retreat by myself, two different places, same teacher, and both wonderful experiences. But when you have that all or nothing thinking, like it's actually easier for me to make a commitment to say, okay, I'm going to go away alone for these 5 days and fully immerse myself in this experience. Yet I can't find 20 minutes to work out in a normal week, right? So it's kind of, oof, okay, well, we need to work on those small habits for sure. Um, so when it comes to, gender equality and, some of the realities that still exist for women, especially in the workplace, there's stats you can find everywhere. I'm not going to read them off here. There's progress. There's a lot of areas that there's still a lot of work to be done, and so, what advice would you give women on, realizing their potential or advocating for themselves or, you know, just not falling prey to sort of the mindset that can creep in when you are in a tough circumstance or dealing with something that is quite frustrating.
Yeah, no, you're right that we've come so far, but there's still so far to go, isn't there? And I think one of the things that we can all be guilty of, and I think it won't just be women, but is that we can look at sort of that journey and only be looking at how far there is left to go. We only ever focus on sort of what's left to do, and then beat ourselves up about that we seem a million miles away from being where we should be. And what I sort of want to encourage people is actually look back. I dare
Hmm.
to take time to sometimes look back and actually celebrate those milestones, those achievements, those successes, no matter how small, they're still a success, they're still a win. And that if you can kind of train the brain to start collecting some of those that have happened previously, then when faced with situations where you think, oh goodness, we've still got so far to go, actually look at how far we've come, and actually we're doing well as an individual, and in terms of women as a whole, we're doing good, girls. We're
Hmm.
doing really well. So I think that's what I'd sort of say in terms of sort of the mindset piece. The other thing, just while we were talking about books and retreats, something that came to me was at the start of the year I read a book, 10% Happier by Dan Harris. You probably have read it. And when he was on a retreat, he asked a question to one of the leaders of the retreat, about sort of like, what do you do about the wandering mind? We're busy, it's frantic. We're always looking at sort of what's happening over there and what's still to be done and all the things that are out of our control. And the leader just sort of said to him, is this useful? And in his book, he says, ask yourself that question. Is this useful? And
Hmm.
it was one of those moments where it kind of stopped me in my tracks reading that, because you could easily dismiss it and think, well, is it, is that actually helpful or something to say? But when you actually sit with it and you think about it, I think it's really, really powerful, because what I often find is that my mind is going at a million miles an hour. I'm constantly thinking of all the things I've got to do, the things I need to hopefully strive to achieve and want to do well because I'm ambitious and
Hmm.
things like that. But at the same time, is it helping me in the present moment? Is it making me sort of be present with my daughter, with the conversations I'm having, doing a good job in the moment I'm in? Or am I getting myself a little bit sort of worked up and anxious, but I'm bringing it all on myself
Hmm.
because of that wandering mind? So I found it over the last couple of months, just when I start to go and start thinking, oh, I need to do this, I need to do this, is this useful? And
Hmm.
often it's not. So to what I do in that respect is I'll take a pen and paper and I'll just jot down the things that are on my mind. And then I'll look at sort of, okay, I won't forget them. I can park them. Now I can be in the moment, and I'll
Hmm.
come around to those when I can. So I found that has been really helpful for me just recently.
Yeah. Yeah, we struggle to have the confidence that we should, that the next right step is getting us where we want to be, right? And so in I'm like you know, there's all these moments that I'm thinking about how far there is to go, not how far I've come. I was actually just working on a keynote presentation for International Women's Day myself, and it prompted me to do some of that reflection that I'm admittedly poor at doing on a regular basis. And I had these moments of, if I'm honest, feeling really proud of myself. And I don't let myself feel that way often. And I sort of thought, you need to, in real time, be more conscious of the progress that is made by just showing up every day and doing, the things that are in front of you. You don't always realize as you're doing them what they're adding up to. But when you look back, you see how that contributes to growth and progress. And yeah, it's really a really good point.
Yeah, but again, it's going back to that idea of that pause again, isn't it?
Hmm.
It's about sort of taking your foot off the treadmill and allowing yourself that space and that time and permission to reflect. And
Hmm.
it's like because we've all got, and I'm sure you've mentioned it plenty of times on the podcast and are aware of this idea of negativity bias, that we're all sort of got negativity baked into our operating system. So we're really good at spotting all the times we messed up,
Hmm.
all our weaknesses, all the things that we feel rubbish at, or the things that have gone wrong in our day or throughout sort of the last few weeks. And then if we're not careful, we can kind of find ourselves just sort of stuck in that way of thinking that sort of we're no good, and that imposter syndrome can start to
Hmm.
in, and we don't find the things that we're proud of. We find the things we're embarrassed about, or we think, oh no, why did I do that? Whereas if we can start training our brains, actually, like you say, to find the moments that we're proud of, the times when we
Hmm.
got it right, then what we're doing is we're almost sort of depositing some good thoughts and memories into that bank account that we've got
Yeah.
up here between our ears. So then when faced with a challenge or faced with a new situation, we can be like, okay, I think I can do this. And it's sort of sometimes you have to take action for the confidence to kick in. You
Hmm.
don't wait for the confidence, because sometimes we might just be waiting forever. But if we can start collecting those experiences and those moments and those positive words that we can say to ourselves, then when faced with those challenges, there is just might be that just quiet voice. It could just be quiet in the head, saying just you're okay. You've been here before.
Hmm.
You've done something similar. Let's see what happens. Let's give it a go.
Yeah. I was thinking as you were talking about, the benefit of sort of being present and being conscious of progress, et cetera. I was thinking about how much evidence there is on the benefits of a daily gratitude practice, which I don't do, would love to, and that it's on my list. But I was thinking when I have, or if I were to do that, my inclination is always to look at what factors external to myself I'm grateful for. It's going to be, something my kids said to me or did, or an experience we had together, or, you know, I'm not programmed to think about, what am I proud of, or, what did I do well, etc. And maybe, that's one of those little shifts, for folks that are good at doing a gratitude practice, to try and think of something every day that you are grateful for that you've done, how you showed up or how you've accomplished even, these tiny micro habits that we're talking about. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
have you heard of glimmers, Sarah? Just out of
Yeah.
interest.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, when you were saying that, I was thinking that's sort of like glimmers. That was something that I learnt about. I think it was probably early last year, and they've made such a difference to me because it's those micro moments, isn't it? Whereas
Hmm.
negativity bias, we're really good at fixating on the one comment that somebody said that upset us, or the email that came in that sort of caused us stress. Whereas glimmers are these tiny little micro moments that spark feelings of peace, of joy, of love,
Hmm.
of contentment. And they're happening all the time, but we've just got to train our brains to get our eye in to start seeing them. And when you do, you'll realize, yeah, they are everywhere. So for
Hmm.
me, like glimmer moments are kind of like that first sip of coffee in the morning, or reading a book, and the cat sort of being on my lap
Hmm.
or something, or seeing the sunrise. My daughter laughing. I mean, I think children's laughter is probably the biggest glimmer of all, and it's made a real impact to me personally in terms of sort of that mindset shift from
Hmm.
moving from negative. I mean, it's hilarious, isn't it? I work for a wellbeing and happiness company, and I'm talking about negativity, but I'm human, just
We're
like
all,
everybody.
yes, yeah.
I have to deal with it all. So, being honest and vulnerable, I can be, my own worst critic, just like we all
Hmm.
can. So, what I used to do for too long, really, I'm embarrassed to admit, is sort of when I stumbled in the door at the end of the day, despite talking about happiness and well-being, my family would be like, how was your day? And I'd sort of say, oh gosh, oh, I can't talk about it. It was an absolute nightmare of a day. And it probably wasn't. It was probably just, one delegate not
Mm,
enjoying something I said at a conference, or a bad driver cutting me up in traffic, or somebody
yeah.
being rude at the supermarket. And what I do is I take that bad thing and carry it with me throughout the day, and then I'd wipe out all the good stuff. Whereas now I've learned about glimmers, I'm training my brain to stop fixating on those bad things because they'll happen anyway, and actually start training my brain to look for the good stuff, look for those
Hmm.
micro moments. So what happens now is when I walk in the door at the end of the day, the question that gets asked is, what glimmers have you experienced today? So we're still
Hmm.
checking in with each other, but instead of spending 30 minutes moaning about the worst bits of our day with the people that I love the most, we now talk about the best bits of our day. And it's completely upgraded our thinking. And it's certainly made an impact to me every day. And in terms of that evidence of looking for things in my environment, it's a nicer place to be, because it's
Hmm.
not about living life through rose tinted glasses. I don't want people thinking that problems will still happen, bad things will still happen. All we're doing with the glimmers or the gratitude is just giving the good stuff a chance to bubble up to the surface, and be seen as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It can be easy when you have both, which everyone does, right? To not give those moments the attention that they deserve. And I think yeah, it's so helpful in your overall perspective, and remembering that there is a lot to be grateful for, even amidst the chaos and challenges and all of that. Okay, so I want to talk about the we've talked already a bit about these sort of micro habits, or these baby steps, if you will. And I saw a post of yours on LinkedIn where you were likening this to the art of Kaizen, and why these small steps matter. So I'm just curious, in the work that you do, are there certain small steps that you find yourself again and again suggesting that you feel like have the biggest impact?
Yeah, I mean, the glimmers definitely in the last year or so have really sort of seems to land with a lot of people. And I mean, they, like I say, they are small things that we can all do. One of the things I also talk a bit about in terms of sort of going back to that idea of self-care and looking after ourselves. I'm a big believer in trying to focus on what we can control rather than getting too worked up about what we can't. Now, that's not to say we don't care, because of course we do care about what's going on in the world and we care about what's going on with other people. It's just about knowing what energy and attention you need to give things, because often we can't do anything about those things, yet they're taking up an awful lot of time and energy and attention. So if we can start shifting our mind to sort of looking at actually what are the things that I am able to control, then
Hmm.
what that then happens is it puts me in a better position to sometimes handle what sort of gets thrown at me that is out of my control. And I often sort of share with people, I do an activity with them. We don't need to do it now. What I get them to do is I get them to write down eat, move, sleep, and relationships on just a piece of paper, and then I ask them to just honestly just score themselves out of 10 in each of those areas. So 10 being do them all the time, like really doing well. 0 being taking my eye off them, probably need a bit of attention. And just to be really clear to those that are listening, sort of eating is just sort of eating the right fruits and
Hmm.
vegetables, getting the recommended daily allowance. Sort of moving, it doesn't mean you need to do high rocks or be a member of a gym. It could just be a bit of yoga or walking the
Hmm.
dog. Sleeping, the recommended allowance is sort of 7 to 9 hours a night. Obviously, when you've got young children, that goes out the window a little
Hmm.
bit. And relationships are very much all the relationships that we have in our lives, the ones that sort of really meaningful and matter to us. So I get people to sort of do that activity, and it's just to sort of draw their attention as to where are they at right now. Because often what we find is sort of we'll have a conversation or an interaction with someone, and sometimes it can bring about sort of a bit of a knee-jerk response. We get sort of a bit annoyed, or thinking about a bad driver cutting us up in traffic. We can respond in a way that isn't perhaps bringing out the best in us. And often it's not the bad driver that's cutting up us in traffic or the person that we're having a conversation with that's caused the reaction. It could be one of these four things that might have gone a bit sort of off over the
Hmm.
last sort of few days. So we might be a bit angry. We might have missed breakfast. So that's the reason we're perhaps not having the best conversation with someone. We might have a child that's in a sleep regression. So we're not doing the best sort of sleep at the moment. So we might be tired. That's why sort of somebody might upset us a little bit more. So it's about sort of, yeah, those people are still going to do those things, but we can't control them. All we can do is focus on what we can control. And honestly, if we
Hmm.
can get eating the right stuff, sleep, getting a bit of exercise and fresh air and checking in with the people that really matter, then it puts us in a good position to sort of handle some of those things. But what I often find, Sarah, is that when I do this activity, people get quite low scores because, in the corporate world and the busy modern world, it's easy to neglect them things, because
Hmm.
as soon as things get full on, they are the first things to go, aren't they? I'll get round to me, like we said
Hmm.
earlier. So what I say to people is, instead of going extreme, instead of saying, right, well, I'm just going to live off kale and smoothies for the next month, and I'm going to join a gym and do 3 classes a night for the next few weeks, and I'm going to get loads and loads of sleep and make lots of social plans, we find ourselves burnt out within less
Hmm.
than a week. It's that intensity. We're going intense. So it's about looking what's the smallest thing we can do that might just help us sort of move those numbers just up by one or even half a
Hmm.
point. So it could be eat an apple. It could be maybe not eating the chocolate bar, because sometimes it's about doing and not doing. It could be a 10-minute walk instead of none at all. It might be not taking our phones to bed, and reading a book before we fall asleep, instead of looking at a screen to help promote
Hmm.
sleep. It could be a real face-to-face conversation instead of a text message. And it's often just shifting people's mindsets that actually, thinking about that Kaizen, that small improvements we can make. It's coming back to that small things we can do repeatedly over time, start to create a big impact.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I think when you are someone who is ambitious, driven, busy, you can discredit the impact, the cumulative impact of those small things, right? So, just last night, I was working late, which I've been doing too much lately. And I did a poor job of estimating how long something was going to take me. So I had a commitment to myself that I was going to lift weights. Typically, I'll do a half an hour, and I just do it at home. I have a space in our basement to work out. But next thing I knew, it was 8:45, and I had just finished my work. And so I immediately start sort of beating myself up because I didn't judge my time well, and now I'm exhausted and I didn't keep my commitment to myself. And my husband said, "Well, why don't you just go do 10 minutes?" Because I do Peloton. And so they have 10-minute classes, 15-minute classes, 20, 30, 45, 60, a whole range. And at first I thought, like, what's 10 minutes? You
Mhm.
know? And then I mean, I knew he was right. And I was like, you know what? Yes, I'm gonna go do it. And I did. And I felt so much better. And
Mhm.
it's like it reinforced, because it's not just about the physical impact of 10 minutes. It's about keeping the commitment to yourself. It's about, making that time and, prioritizing, what you need, even if it's just a little bit. So yeah, it's yeah, the struggle is real, but so is the benefit, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Hannah, a lot of the work that you do with teams, so when you do some of your keynotes and workshops, centers around navigating change, because as you said, it's a constant at this point, and something that I think businesses in all industries are grappling with. How do we keep pace? How do we avoid change fatigue? How do we make sure our people are okay and still we're driving toward these things that we need to be driving toward? Obviously, this is a huge topic, and we could have done an entire episode on this, and maybe we could in the future.
Yeah,
But if
sounds
you
good.
were to share a point that you try to prioritize to people in these sessions that maybe is often missed or overlooked or under prioritized, what would that be?
Yeah, I like you say, it's a huge topic, and you can go really sort of deep on this. For the purpose of this conversation, I mean, we could coming back to some of the things I've already mentioned, is that sort of it's looking at how we respond to these situations. So when I work with teams, I often talk about how the way in which we're looking at situations very much depends on individuals. So you and I are having the same conversation, but we're both sort of seeing it through very different lenses. And that's just like when teams hear the word change, there's change coming. One person in the team will think, oh gosh, here we go again. It's constant, it's fast. It wasn't like this in the old days. It's something you often hear, oh gosh, lots of moaning and groaning. Whereas another person in the team hearing the exact same information might be like, okay, do you know what? Change it isn't great. Change requires us to adapt. It requires us to think differently and be flexible. But there's often a reason why we're trying to change. We're trying to obviously get better. We're trying to be more efficient and be more effective. So how we're looking at that situation then influences the story we're telling ourselves about that situation. And ultimately it goes on to influence how we respond to that situation. So what I like to sort of start with when working with teams around this idea of change is actually how we're looking at things can be a source of strength or a source of weakness. It's entirely up to us. And if we can start taking these moments of change and uncertainty and challenge and daring to try and see the good stuff, daring to try and see the opportunities and the possibilities that are there. Yes, it's not going to be easy, and we're going to have to probably dig deep and keep going, but working together, then actually we might come out the other side and be really, dare I say, thankful
Hmm.
for what we've just been through, and at least learn and grow from it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that point. So much of it comes down to perspective. I think what is important for leaders to remember is that lens of positivity, what if we're looking for the good in it, if we're looking for the opportunity in it, what equates to positivity or potential for you may very well be different than someone on your team or someone who's adjacent or someone who is, in a senior leadership role. So remembering that it isn't just about, I mean, it starts with the leader having that perspective themselves, but I think it's really important to consider that you can't just expect that you find sort of a positive hook and that everyone aligned to it, right? What they need to look at or think about to see that as potential or opportunity instead of frustration might be a bit different. And I think, that remembering that and then everything that gets into in terms of understanding their perspective and understanding what is important to them, is, yeah, a very interesting conversation.
Absolutely. And, I'm so pleased you brought that up, Sarah, because I think that is a huge thing. I think, yeah, it's one thing to sort of, if you yourself can see the positive in the situation and look at things objectively, is great. But it is that as a leader, it's that awareness that not everybody else might see it like that. And
Mhm.
it's about that acceptance, and it's about giving people the time and the space that they perhaps need. And I think that, with change, it's a lot of uncertainty,
Mhm.
really. I personally think I don't think it's necessarily change people don't like. I think it's the uncertainty that change brings
Yeah.
with it. And as a leader, I think the best thing we can all try to do is that, okay, we might not have all the answers. We might be learning as we go, as we move through this period of change. But if we can try and put people's minds at ease with this uncertainty, then that will really help our teams, because I think that they'll be okay if you don't have all the answers.
Mhm.
Truthfully, it's okay. As a lead, to hear a leader say, "I don't have all the answers," you can appreciate it and respect it. But what we do even more appreciate is when they tell you as much as they can, and that's when communication comes in. And I
Mhm.
think that if we can try and be as transparent and clear in our communication and keeping our teams up to speed with what we know, and letting them know that, we're all in this together, that we've got an open door, feel free to talk at any point, can really help people. Because going back to that idea of negativity bias, our brains are always on the hunt looking for danger.
Mhm.
Our brains like predictability. Our brains like routine. They like to know what's coming. Well, change isn't that. Change
Mhm.
is uncertain. Change is unpredictable. Changes can be random and chaotic. So of course, most people don't think they like change because we're not meant to. Our
Right.
brains want us to. So I think as a leader, it's that awareness piece of, okay, this is how people are feeling. So how can we bring out the best in them, and how can we be sort of mindful that people are on their own journeys with this as well? And that's where we
Mhm.
need to get to know our teams as individuals as well. There's a famous football, soccer, you call it over in the States, football over here, of Manchester United, which I'm sure some of your listeners are familiar with the
Mhm.
team. They used to have a very famous manager called Alex Ferguson, who I should say Sir Alex Ferguson. He sort of huge success with the club, and one of the things he's most sort of well known for is how, as a leader, he adapted each of his conversations and responses to each of his players and team members. So he knew what brought out the best in each,
Mhm.
but it required taking the time to get to know them and knowing how to do that. So one of his players, he knew he needed more of a tough love approach. So that was
Mhm.
where he went. Another one, they really wouldn't have responded to a tough love approach. They needed a bit more nurturing. So he made
Mhm.
sure he responded in that way. And I think that's such a powerful thing, that such an effective leader like Alex Ferguson took the time to do that and get to know his team and help them through periods of uncertainty and
Yeah.
change and trial. It is really, really, yeah, powerful.
It is, and I think it's the real path to success, right? I don't believe there's an effective shortcut to not taking the time to really understand your people and, what those distinctions are and what motivates each of them, what, might land most for them when it comes to fear or uncertainty, and how do you help them pass that part of it. So yeah, it's a great example, and I think a lot of the leaders that I speak with reinforce the point that yes, it takes time, yes, it takes effort, but it's the best, most effective way to achieve success. There's no kind of, way around, doing that work if you want to do it well. Um, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, no, I was totally in agreement because I think it's one of those things we say, oh, you can hear people say, I haven't got time to do that. I haven't got time to
Hmm.
get to know people, but you end up paying the price further
Absolutely.
down the line. So it's worth putting the time in to begin with,
Hmm.
because then you end up almost saving the time and making the time back up. Because when you get to know someone, you develop a bit of a shorthand with them,
Hmm.
in terms of how you communicate. You know how to bring about the effectiveness in individuals, rather than constantly find yourself on the back foot and being in repair mode and damage control. So I totally agree. It's worth the investment right at the beginning.
Yeah, you either invest the time, effort, and energy up front for it to, go more smoothly, or you invest that time trying to go back and fix and unravel, what has gone awry. I agree. So, Hannah, this year's theme for International Women's Day is Give to Gain. And I'm curious what comes to mind for you around this year's theme.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great theme. It really is. And the first things I think that sort of come to my mind is this idea of sort of giving, and it goes full circle really in terms of where we started this conversation, daring to give back some time to ourselves
Hmm.
so that we can help other people gain as well. So by doing those things of sort of eat, move, sleep, and relationships, looking after ourselves first, finding the pauses, allowing ourselves to go on holiday guilt free, spend time with our family, giving time back to ourselves, we gain it ourselves because we feel better, but also we can move people and females up so that they also feel supported as well. And I think in terms of like for the female leaders that are listening to this, it's so powerful to show, but by going first, that sort of role modeling, that you do take the time to do that. It's absolutely not a weakness, it's a strength to do those things. I heard Gabby Reese, who I think she was a volleyball player,
Hmm.
years ago. I heard her once say, online it was, that her rule when it comes to her interactions with other people is I'll go first. So and I really love it because she says in order for a conversation to happen, one person needs to start it off. So I'll go first. It might as well be me. So when she's going for a walk in the morning, she'll say, good morning, hello. She'll be the person that starts it off. And she says what's happened from those interactions is that magic has happened in those ordinary everyday moments by her taking the time to sort of
Hmm.
lift up somebody's day and start the conversation. Someone's got to start it. It might as well be me. And taking that idea and applying it to the theme of International Women's Day, I think it maps over really nicely because it's like daring as a female to go first, daring to
Hmm.
be the one to look after yourselves and share that sort of that self-care journey. It provides this wonderful opportunity for other women in the community and around you to think, oh, okay, well, if they're doing it, perhaps I can as well. And it usually just starts with one person being brave and I'll go first. So I've sort of ran with this idea and apply it. So when I go for a walk in the morning with the family, we mentioned my daughter, she's only 18 months, so we're starting young in our house. So I appreciate it, but I'd love my daughter to be kind. I'd
Hmm.
love my daughter to grow up kind, and in order for her to do that, well, she's got to learn it. She's got to see it she's got to see it from me as one of her role models. So I need to be kind in order for my daughter Daisy to be kind. So what we do is we'll say hello to people when we're walking around our village, but we'll also pick up litter as
Hmm.
well. So she sees that we're kind to individuals, but we're also kind to the environment and the world that we live in. I'll go first. That idea of I'll take charge, I'll have a go, I'll put myself out there. And in terms of sort of bringing it into a leadership perspective, I think sometimes daring to go first and be vulnerable. So this idea of sort of going back to change, I don't have all the answers right now. I wish I did, but I don't. Sometimes just hearing that of daring to be
Hmm.
vulnerable allows other people to think, oh, okay, they're doing the best that they can. But by giving that information, people are gaining sort of confidence and reassurance from you. So I love it to bits. I think it's super powerful.
Yeah. Oh, I had so many things that came to mind as you were saying that. So I love that point of I'll go first and what it made me think of. So I'll be honest, when I was reading this year's theme, I do think it's a great theme, but there was a part of me that is probably representative of the phase I'm in right now. Of I mentioned sort of self-abandonment. I have not been doing a good job of taking care of myself. And as I was reading it, I was thinking like give to gain. Like, what more can women give? Like, we're giving everything all the time, right? So, I mean, that's like the true sentiment of a working mom. I think, though, you know, the point that you made about daring to go first, it made me think about a different perspective on, taking the initiative to take care of ourselves and not only what that does for us, which is crucial. And you mentioned earlier how that really helps us show up better for others, but also how, all ships rise with the tide, right? If we do that better, even in tiny doses, unapologetically, and we fight against that guilt that so many women feel of prioritizing what they need and giving to themselves. Let that serve as sort of a collective, rebellion of more women taking that same note and looking at that necessity of giving to yourself as what it is, which is a necessity. It's not selfish. It's not something that we should feel guilty about. So I like that perspective of not just it doing it because it is what I need or how I can best help my family or show up in my career, but also because as women we all need to do a better job of quieting that guilt and being willing to give ourselves what we need. The other thing that I thought of that I want to say is, and obviously I'm looking at this through the lens of a lot of traditional roles, and I don't mean to overgeneralize, but I think when it comes to the corporate world and the balance of parenthood and sort of the disparity that still exists between men in leadership roles and women in leadership roles who happen to be parents. I've seen such wonderful examples of men also being vulnerable in terms of I missed this meeting because I didn't want to miss my child's soccer game, or I need to take off and delegate this to someone else because I need to stay home with my child who is ill, or I do this meeting remotely because I'm responsible for drop off or pickup. Whatever those things are, I think it's so powerful as well for men to think about how that type of vulnerability rises, all ships rise with that tide as well, right? So how it comes from both angles. Yeah.
Definitely. No, again, it's a really, really important point. I had a meeting, well, I was meant to have a meeting yet yesterday with a male leader for some work that we're going to be doing in the next few months together. And we were scheduled sort of to meet in the afternoon virtually. And I got an email from him first thing in the morning to say, I'm ever so sorry, Hannah, can we rearrange the meeting today? Because my son is unwell and I need to look after him and stay home today and be with him. And I can honestly say, receiving that email, I was like, no problem
Hmm.
at all. And I think that there can be that fear. I don't know, maybe it is it for men that they think that they can't say that. But being on the receiving end of that, I was like, oh my gosh, of course that is your number one priority. I love that that is your number one
Hmm.
priority. We can have a meeting any time that sort of no problem. The meeting can wait. Your poorly child can't. So
Hmm.
I just thought immediately I was like just almost drawn to that individual more because I thought, yes, you've clearly got your priorities in the right place. I respect you for doing that. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes going back to the voice in their head, we think the opposite, don't we? We
Hmm.
think that, oh no, they're not going to think I take work seriously. They're not going to think that I care enough, that I'm, we haven't got childcare to cover us. No, we're working parents. We're doing the best we can. And sometimes if that means we need to cancel a meeting to be there with our children or family members, then that's what we need to do. It's being
Yeah.
human. And I
Yeah.
think when people show their humanness within leadership as well, as much as possible, it has a very positive effect on the rest
Hmm.
of the team. And I think it's going back to that narrative of challenging it, because I don't think that was encouraged for many years. And it's nice to sort of suddenly start to see a shift in that perspective now, where it's like, actually, no, please show us your human side, because it
Yeah.
does create connection and we do appreciate it.
I agree. I think, there is power in just showing how parenthood can be shared and how any working parent, should be taking part in that. The only thing I'm conscious of is I think societally, there can be a bias toward, the man sending that email being seen as a hero, and the woman who would often be sending a similar email, you know, it's the norm, and that is tricky for me as well, right? And so that gets into, yet again, a whole nother conversation. But I do feel like it warranted just saying out loud that we also need to be really careful about not assigning sort of, hero status to men who are being honest about doing the same things that women are doing as well. It's more so looking at it equally, and I think from your perspective, you would have been just as understanding,
Absolutely.
if, as we all would, right?
Yes.
So yeah, I know that wasn't your point, but I just feel like it does bear mentioning that we can't kind of glorify men who are showing up and giving these examples, but there's power in them doing it because it levels the playing field, it equalizes it, over time, those norms become less norm because it's shared, and I think that's, yeah, helpful.
Absolutely. No, it is such a valid point you're making there. And totally, because I had a conversation last week with an that's my partner's grandmother. Okay, so an elderly sort of older generation, and she was talking about how sort of seeing sort of some of the family, how well, it was like our cousin, he was playing with his daughter for like 20 minutes non-stop, and she was saying how wonderful it was to
Mm,
see him there on the floor playing. He was engaged for 20 minutes. And I'm hearing this thinking, yeah.
right. Yeah.
Sure, would you have said that if it was, the mum on the floor for 20 minutes? No, we wouldn't be. And I think it's that sort of generation. She didn't mean anything, but she
Right.
meant it in a lovely way, like the example I shared earlier. But it is interesting that as soon as sort of, a male does that, it can be seen as,
Hmm.
oh my gosh, what a hero. And you think, well, the mum's been on the floor for the last half an hour and we haven't
Right.
mentioned
Yep.
her.
Yeah, and I think it's nothing more than just being conscious of
Yes.
the question to yourself for everyone of, okay, if I were looking at this the other way, would I feel similarly? Or is something societal or, stereotypical kind of playing into how I feel about this situation, good or bad, right? It's just a way to be conscious of any of that bias that is built into to everyone to some extent. So,
Absolutely.
that's part of the process, of continuing to work toward better equality for everyone. So, okay, Hannah, it's been so lovely talking with you. Thank you so much for coming on and joining us. I shared with you before we started. I have my copy of Love Notes. Was supposed to arrive yesterday. It's arriving today, but I'm very excited to read it. And I will share it with the community through our newsletter. But in the meantime, be sure to check out Hannah's LinkedIn and the Art of Brilliance website. We will make sure that we link those in the podcast post. But thank you so much for coming on and celebrating International Women's Day with me.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute delight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. You can learn more by visiting the home of the Unscripted podcast at futureoffieldservice.com. The podcast is published in partnership with IFS. You can learn more at ifs.com. As always, thanks for listening.